only about 4 people, and we had 2 users, and I've seen it grow to a company that serves more than 2,000 partners and clients in the campaign and organizing world. And yeah, I originally got involved because I felt like organizers and campaign and organization volunteers and staff needed better technology to do their work more efficiently so that they could save time to do the real things that matter, like building relationships with volunteers. And right here you can see my little dog, Marshall. He's sitting outside of my office waiting for me to be done. But that's Marshall, my pride and joy.
Thanks, Liz. So hi, everybody. I'm Ruby Anaya, head of product at Swing Left. She, her, hers. I've been at Swing Left for the past year and a half. Before that, in the private sector, working on consumer and social apps. So this is my first experience working in the political space, bringing a fresh and sort of consumer social focused lens on developing products that meet people where they're at. And this is my adorable boy, Nacho. That's when he was a baby. He's about 20 pounds now, so he's grown up. But to talk a little bit about Swing Left, at Swing Left, our mission is to give grassroots volunteers and donors the most high impact actions that they can take for the most important elections. So we're unique in the way that we're solely focused on the volunteer experience versus running voter contact programs or paid media programs ourselves. We serve as a funnel to connect grassroots volunteers with actions that matter most near them. And we've always been a digital first organization. So since the beginning, our staff has worked remotely, and we've run our organizing programs and operations as distributed and digital first programs. Of course, as all of us have experienced, COVID has had a dramatic and devastating effect on our country, and no one has been spared in the spectrum of impact. But we've spent the last months adjusting our programming and updating our tech tools to shift to support full virtual organizing.
Cool. And I'll tell you a little bit about Mobilize if you don't have experience with it yet. But we are a digital events platform that allows you to easily create and manage events, easily recruit volunteers. And we bake in a lot of volunteer retention tools into our platform that is where a lot of the data from this presentation is coming from. So our goal is to unlock the full potential of your supporters. We know that the issue is not organizations caring and knowing that their volunteers are the most important part of their program, but just having the tools to do these really smart things with your volunteers that aren't going to take up all of your time. So we're laser focused on helping you drive more action more easily to achieve your mission. It's our goal to make it really easy for your volunteers to sign up and keep coming back at the lowest possible lift for you. So we want to make it easy for you to recruit more volunteers more easily, increase the engagement of the volunteers that you do have, and turbocharge your efforts with our network. We have a network of over 2 million supporters that when you are a Mobilize partner, you are able to sort of reap the benefits of. So this presentation is structured with 3 sections, the 3 R's. The first is recruitment. So the first most important part of engaging volunteers during social distancing and always is recruiting. So the big thing here is really balancing your current list and engaging and nurturing those relationships while also bringing new opportunities for new people to get involved. That's really the big balance that I always found as an organizer and something that we've thought a lot about at Mobilize. And I'll also say a lot of the things that I'm talking about in this presentation will be super relevant to Mobilize users, but you can also use these tactics if you're not a Mobilize user. We definitely make it very, very easy and turnkey, but the insights that we are delivering can be done at any stage of organization, whether you're a Mobilize user or not. So we have found that our most successful partners have baked volunteer asks into all of their digital channels. So we see that our signups come from all different places on the sort of digital funnel. So 20% of our signups come from web, 20 from social, and 20 from SMS recruitment. We also see 40% of our signups come from email. So it can take some time to set up these programs and to set up these sort of funnels, but we've really seen that when you spend the time to do that on the front end, down the line, you will really see the rewards. This is all about making sure that every corner of your digital program includes some option for volunteers to get involved and that they're really high quality asks. So we make it really easy to sign up. We are constantly testing our design to find new ways to boost the number of signups that people are getting. But this shows us some really interesting data. My favorite piece of data probably is that 15% of signups sign up because they have been given an automated ask to sign up for a similar event. So Mobilize does a series of pop-ups after people sign up for an event. We do a series of emails post-event that are automated that give volunteers and supporters another opportunity to sign up. So we see that 15% of all of the signups find an event because they were suggested that event by Mobilize. So what this tells us about engaging volunteers in general, even if you're not a Mobilize user, is that people want to be asked to do more. So always make sure that you include follow-up and really just continue to ask people what else they would like to do and create those opportunities for people. So leveraging your network. This is another kind of favorite piece of mine. So we see that 40% of volunteers on the Mobilize platform share opportunities with a friend. On Mobilize, you're able to do that really easily by, we just have an option for you to share the event via your social channels or send it via email or send it to people just through a link. And that's all automated. But it really shows that people want to tell their networks what they're doing and they want to bring friends with them. So 40% of volunteers actually take that ask and do it. So you can certainly incorporate this into your follow-up program. You can also incorporate it into your recruitment plan and ask people right after they sign up. And 17% of our total signups come from social recruitment. So asking people to do that then leads to more signups. And 30% of our signups come from cross promotion between organizations. So Mobilize, we have a big feature called promotions that allows organizations to share the events of their partner organizations. And we see that 30% of all signups come from that cross promotion feature. So this is certainly a time to work together, and it really does work. People might be on your volunteer recruitment platform and see something else that they want to take action for, and it always just really helps. So in addition to branded feeds, Mobilize partners are featured and centralized on our mobilize.us feed, which also increases their visibility.
So one example of how Swing Left recruits and also leverages Mobilize is our Action Finder tool. So we recruit new users through the low lift ask of simply just asking to enter your zip code. This is where we show a variety of straightforward actions, allowing the user to convert via the action that most resonates with them, basically multiple entry points. And this is where we bring in Mobilize events into this interface and have an algorithm that ranks actions based on relevance to the user and impact of the ask. And we also definitely leverage what Liz was talking about, the bring a friend feature, as a way to recruit additional volunteers.
So retain. Now you have a bunch of volunteers. You have baked digital asks into all of your funnels. You've asked volunteers to bring in more people. You've gotten people to sign up for more events. And the next piece is really retaining them. So we've seen that increasing the pure number of engaging virtual opportunities that you have for people, communicating consistently, asking for feedback and re-engaging really helps people make the most out of the lists that they already have. So current virtual organizing levels on Mobilize. Mobilize has always offered virtual options. It was one of the really early features that we built back in 2018. But we have seen that obviously people are shifting to almost 100% virtual action. And what has been really interesting to see is that the amount of just raw volunteers that we're seeing has not gone down at all. It's actually gone up. Our weekly volunteer sign up volume is currently higher than any week in 2019. And that was actually true like back in April. So people are really wanting to help out right now. And you can see here, we really quickly saw people shift to virtual actions, which was really cool to see. The number of virtual actions that we had on the platform was much smaller in March than it was, much larger than it had been in the past. So types of virtual events on Mobilize, I'm going to run through this quickly, but there are a couple of ways that you can use virtual actions on Mobilize. You have a few different options. One is to use a virtual volunteer action that allows you to kind of schedule a flexible date range and shift time. The cool thing about this is that it gives you a button that allows you to add in any URL that you want, and then volunteers can just click that button and be redirected to the action very quickly. And then the other option is to do more of a sort of mirroring an in-person type of event, but online. And so that's where a volunteer goes and they check off a shift time that they want to take. They can choose from multiple or they can choose from one, but they're signing up to do an event in the future. So those are the two different ways that you can leverage the Mobilize platform for volunteer actions. And also, you could do this otherwise as well. So we've also seen that people have had a lot of success with retention when they incorporate conference links, obviously, and community tools into their digital programming. So volunteers on Mobilize sign up for a virtual training, and then after they sign up, they get an automated email from us that gives them all the instructions for how to join the event, and essentially does all of the confirmation work for you. But in this email, you can customize a little bit of it so that you can include the stuff that people will need to do the event. I've seen organizations be really successful with adding Slack groups. So we have a couple of partners who have grown really robust volunteer teams through Slack. They leave a Slack instruction to sign up for the group in the automated confirmation, and then they are able to kind of grow these teams of volunteers who are responsible for taking a certain type of action. So you can grow a peer-to-peer text team, you can grow a phone team, but that is something that we've seen be really successful. I think it helps kind of mirror some of the community that people get from volunteer events just online. So definitely leverage community tools if you have access to them, and make sure that you have a system that allows you to add conference links really easily into the events. There we go. So training volunteers before taking their events, you can do this on Mobilize by either having a virtual action a shifted virtual action where people sign up and join a live training. You can also include a pre-recording of a training in the either in the message that people are getting before an event, or you can have an act now button redirect that to that pre-recorded training. But training volunteers right now and spending that time to make sure that people feel confident using these new digital tools, we've seen that to be really, really effective and really good at making sure volunteers are confident in what they're doing and that they actually want to come back and do it again. So definitely take advantage of the easy recording tools that you can use to make these trainings. Also do some live ones, but having some different options here, I think will really help kind of round out a lot of your organizing programs. So identifying and utilizing key relationship touch points and nudges like surveys. So Mobilize has a feature that sends an automated survey after people complete their events. So if I complete an event, about an hour afterwards, I'll get a text message and an email that say, hey, like, we saw that you signed up for this event. How did it go? The volunteer can reply and say good or bad. And then they can also just leave open-ended text to give feedback. So I love this feature. I always found as an organizer that when I had so many volunteers coming in to do something, it was hard to spend the time with each of them to be able to like really get substantive feedback. And we just kind of add this in to make it a little bit easier to do that. But the big data point here is that 30% of volunteers and event attendees actually respond with in-depth qualitative feedback. So that's a big signal that doing these types of surveys is something that's really appreciated and that makes volunteers feel like they're part of the organization and makes them feel more connected to it. We also see with our confirmation emails that we send out that are automated, 50% of attendees confirm their attendance automatically. So we send an email that says, are you coming to this? And 50% of the people who get that email actually give us a status update. And then we also see that 90% of confirmed attendees show up. So definitely confirmation processes are so important to make sure that you actually get the people in the door or the virtual door that you've signed up. Mobilize makes that really automated and easy, but there's hundreds of ways that you can incorporate confirmations into your program. And then finally, turning your volunteers into donors. This actually works. We see that 15% of people who see this window, this donation window, actually donate through our ActBlue integration. We've also extended that integration so that you can include other links if you're not using ActBlue. But I find that people are often afraid to make a donation ask to a volunteer, and that's understandable, but the data has shown us that people want to do more, they want to give, you just need to ask them.
So to speak again to retaining your users, a big thing that we do at Swing Left and that I just promote in general is just listening to your users. So we survey our users monthly, asking them how likely they are to volunteer or donate in the next 3 months, what types of actions they're most likely to take. And in, light of COVID, we also started asking, how, the pandemic is making them feel about upcoming elections and their ability to volunteer or donate. And from some of those surveys, we learned that our supporters indicated they're most interested in letter writing. And so we actively leaned into investing more into our letter writing program with our affiliate Vote Forward. We also leverage MobilizeAmerica emails tools such as custom RSVP confirmation emails to help transition people from in-person events to virtual organizing. We use those tools to include links to trainings to help our users feel supported as they transition to learning how to use Zoom or phone bank for the first time. Our field team also uses the MobilizeAmerica post-event survey to improve our programming. A specific example of this is learning people new to phone banking during our Wisconsin phone banking efforts complained or gave feedback in the survey that they weren't talking to enough people. So we realized that we weren't setting expectations for what the phone banking experience is like, and we, pivot or reevaluated our communications based on that.
Thanks, Ruby. Yeah, giving volunteers the experience that they want when you can is a really good way to make sure that they come back. So making sure that you have a plan for how to gather that feedback in a remote world, I think is really important. So reward. Now you've recruited, you've retained volunteers and they've come back again and again, taken more action, taken more responsibility. We'll talk about how to reward those people and use your full tool set to build actual community rather than just focusing on particular events. So how to reward. I've always thought about this as these three things. Appreciate by saying thank you and following up. This is in many ways like a big organization piece, just making sure that you are able to follow up with everyone quickly after an event, that you have a system for that. But showing that appreciation really helps to keep people coming back and feel like their work is really important. Empower volunteers to host events and take actual ownership in your organization. This is a good way to reward, and it's also a good way to retain because people will feel more connected to the organization if they have a real responsibility in it. And then share results, share metrics, share insider baseball, share your strategy with volunteers. I think people are sometimes a little afraid to do this, but volunteers really want to know about this stuff and they will totally understand it if you present it to them. So always say thank you. This is easy in the Mobilize platform. We have a messaging feature that allows you to email all of the attendees, all of the people who have a particular status from your event. So you could also use this section to email all of the people who canceled or didn't show up and asking them to come back next time, telling them what they missed. But we make this really easy. So you can email attendees after their shift. You can also email them beforehand to give them other instructions. But you can let volunteers know how they contributed. This was one of my favorite things to do as an organizer, was send people an email after their event, letting them know how many calls we made, how many door knocks we did, etc., and just making them realize that the 80 phone calls that they made or the door packet that they knocked on was contributing to something bigger than just that packet. So let volunteers know how they contributed. And then you can send this directly through the Mobilize platform, or you can send it via email. And then the next thing is harnessing the power of distributed organizing. So we launched distributed organizing in early 2019, and it has been a really amazing feature to watch. Oh, hi, Nacho. To watch take off. And that is because people have just been incredibly receptive to it. So 28% of the total events on Mobilize are hosted by volunteers. That's a huge number. And these are events that happen without any staff help, basically. 13% of total signups on Mobilize are for events that are hosted by volunteers. So these events actually get people to them. And we've had over 26,000 volunteer hosts to date, which is really cool. So the Mobilize distributed organizing platform is really cool. It allows you to, I think, have the right balance between giving volunteers direction, making sure that they're going to put high quality events on the page that are going to get signups, but also really allowing them to own the event. So you can, when you create an event, when you create a volunteer hosted campaign in Mobilize, you are essentially building up a template form, and you can include pieces that are default that you set Volunteers can also edit them, but you can also do things like include a bunch of different photos that will appear on these events. So you have some room to kind of to give the parameters for what you want to see from these events. However, volunteers are given really low-level access to the Mobilize platform so that they can then edit their events, so that they can also email their attendees, so that they can reshift the people who came to their last event. So they're also really able to actually own them. So that's why this is one of my favorite features that we offer. But the main point here is that volunteers really want to do more. And if you have a distributed organizing program that you can leverage, now is really the best time to do it. But clearly from the data that we've seen on Mobilize, the fact that 28% of the events that we even have on their platform are from volunteers just shows that volunteers are really ready to do this, and that they want to if they're given the opportunity. So especially in the time of social distancing, when you might not be able to get to every area of the country or the state or the district that you want to be working in, leveraging distributed organizing not only gives you the ability to reach more people, but it also keeps volunteers engaged because they have an elevated sense of ownership over your organization. So finally, collecting data really allows you to do all of these things well. So collecting data allows you to follow up with everyone, send surveys, see what types of surveys might be interesting to people. You can use you can incorporate your CRM with Mobilize, messaging tools as well. And these are some tools that are on our roadmap for development for integrations. But thinking about your volunteer program, especially now, as something that is integrated with other pieces of your program and is really a holistic experience, it is really important and will help you see results. So finally, looking at the volunteer lifecycle, not as individual events, but as a volunteer experience is a really good way to think about this. So you want to recruit, you need to have opportunities for people, you need to have different types of opportunities for people to take action with. And then once you get these people in the door, you've got to balance the list that you already have, keeping those people engaged, and also still finding new people to bring into the funnel. But you go into this retain and engage section. And then finally, always reward so that the people that you have been retaining take more action, take more responsibility, and feel appreciated while they're doing it. But trying to think about this as a cycle from the volunteer's perspective will be a good way to kind of rethink your organizing program during this remote time.
Thanks, Liz. So yeah, just to kind of piggyback off of what Liz is saying, one of the ways that we think about rewarding our volunteers is empowering them with the tools they need to volunteer effectively and organize effectively. So our groups tool makes it easy for our volunteers to use Mobilize distributed organizing events and gives them autonomy over their organizing efforts. We also always encourage recognizing your community by showing them results, as Liz was saying. After each cycle, we provide an impact report showcasing all the work that swing lefters put in. Our creative team showcases work through videos, social media takeovers, as Liz was saying, sending thank you emails and notes to volunteers. We also have a political giving platform called Blueprint, where we have a quarterly impact report that visualizes the impact of donors' donations as well. So it's just really important to set that time aside and plan for that time to recognize your community. So to close us out, recruit. Who are your users? Is your product speaking to them? Look at the user flow for each persona of, whether that's your volunteers or your donors or students or whoever, and optimize for their journey and encourage people to engage their friends. For retain, now that you know your users, how are you keeping them engaged? Recommend actions based on previous behaviors, listen to them, incorporate user interviews or surveys or feedback to better understand how your community uses your product and identify opportunities to improve. And then for reward, identify touch points that you can recognize your community, show them the results of their work, and maintain momentum for next cycle. With that, I think we're ready for any questions if anyone has any.
Ruby, is there anything in the Q&A? Oh, I'm going to stop sharing for a sec. Okay, Q&A.
There's a question. I'd love to hear how Swing Left or Mobilize clients organize their staff structures. Do you have separate digital organizing and tech team departments? Yes, so I can start with Swing Left. We have a tech and product team that I co-lead with our head of engineering. And we also have a digital team, which focuses on email, social, paid ads, as well as a creative team, comms, obviously field and organizing, and operations, and a few others. So yes, we have a team of myself, our head of engineering, 2 engineers, and a product designer, and also an analytics lead.
I would say the biggest thing that I see partners have success with in terms of staffing is making sure that organizing and digital organizing are included in each other's work, and that there's not siloing happening. So that can look really different depending on the size and scope of the organization, but incorporating organizing into digital and making sure that those communication structures are really good is what I've at least seen to be successful. I'm gonna check the answer live thing. So the question is, do you have any more advice about how to foster a sense of community amongst your volunteers? I'm gonna let you take this, Ruby, because Swing Left does such a good job at this.
Yeah, so speaking back to our groups tool, we basically built a platform to empower volunteers to organize within their communities. And when I first joined, one of the first things I did was do a series of user interviews with volunteers across the country, asking them how we can best support them, and developing a product roadmap based on their feedback, as well as based on what we saw in terms of the data and behaviors. So giving them the tools that they need to organize online and to have a sense of their own identity within the Swing Left greater community. So like having their group pages have their social media, having their group pages have their like custom logos that they create for each of their groups. And again, hooking up into Mobilize to allow them to have basically kind of like their own webpage of their events that they're hosting for their community.
And then we have a question in the chat. I'll just read it. This is from John. So the question is basically, how do we get new volunteers? So it's one thing to organize volunteers that you already have, absolutely, but if you're a small organization who has less reach, then it can be challenging to find new volunteers. I can start with with an answer, and then Ruby, I'll let you go for it. But yeah, this is really hard. So I've worked on larger like presidential campaigns, and then much smaller organizations and campaigns like congressional primaries that are that people are not as that have been harder to engage people in. And I would say, I mean, like definitely lean into keeping the people that you already have. That is, I think, more important, even more important in those smaller races and organizations and communities. And so leaning into that is important, which you already know. And then I would say with the getting new people, like it's all just really a numbers game, and making sure that you have multiple strategies that you can just kind of turnkey operate at once. So making sure that you have good brainstorming sessions with other volunteers, with staff, and that you think of all of these small things that you can do, like send something after a shift to ask people to bring two friends to the next shift, and small things like that, and just making sure that someone's responsible for it, that it's as automated as you can make it. So if you can do a platform like Mobilize, like that stuff just baked in, but making sure that you have a way to like do that consistently, and do all of those things consistently will maybe not right away, um, provide a lot, but you'll start to see some of that trickle in. Ruby, do you have any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I would bring up is, are there other organizations that you can partner with that, have similar goals and, are aligned on mission. So, we work really closely with our affiliate Vote Forward on identifying letter writing campaigns that that meet our super state strategy at Swing Left. And so promoting those opportunities as well, so that we're reaching people where they're at, whether they can write letters or phone bank or whatever options there are. So I would say having multiple entry points for asks and looking at other organizations that you can potentially partner with. I think there's another question of how do you get volunteers? I'm with a small grassroots org, and we got some new volunteers through a watch party of our lawyer making appeals court oral argument. We don't have the tools to automate follow-up yet, so we weren't able to take advantage of the excitement and re-engagement of the event. So I would say, if you're a smaller org, again, like depending on the type of events that you have, is, can you leverage like the Swing Left groups tool of events that you post there, pulled into our Action Finder tool as well. So that's another potential entry point. And, there's a lot of other like free email tools to, re-engage people. I would just say like constantly monitor your list and, focus on the existing volunteers that you have to then expand through their networks.
Yeah, and it sounds like, Carla, like that was a really awesome event. And I think it just sort of shows that when you do have an opportunity for something exciting, always take it and do that watch party or training or whatever you can kind of leverage. And if you have the systems to be ready to take advantage of follow up afterwards, then that's even better.
There's another question in the Q&A. Curious to hear how you were seeing voter and GOTV plans shift in the context of COVID, same events, just virtual, or completely different approaches to reaching voters than would have deployed before. So we're definitely leaning much more heavily into phone banking, but as well I spoke about letter writing. So we're working with Vote Forward and a bunch of other progressive organizations on what we're calling the Big Send, which is a campaign to write 10 million letters to voters across the country, mailing them out the week before the election to get out the vote and through letter writing. And then in terms of phone banking, we've also developed a new phone banking hub on our site where we're offering training and just more information on the phone banking experience. I don't know, Liz, if you had any other.
No, I mean, we've definitely seen organizations think about how to shift this remotely, obviously. And I think it has seemed to be a combination of a lot of those follow up and chase mechanisms. that happen virtually. And I think we'll probably see some drop off type events and things like that. But it's definitely been interesting to see how people have gotten creative. Cool. It looks like we have 5 minutes left. Oh, great. So this question's from Erin. Can you talk a bit about how you prioritize asks to volunteers? Like if you're doing a recruitment drive, but also want them to contact an elected official on a policy issue to avoid overwhelming, confusing them. Ruby, I bet you have really good insights to this for how to structure this virtually. But what I always found as an organizer is to sort of have an ask ladder. And if you start with that, then you can change it depending on your audience. But if you start with a really good ask ladder and say, like, this thing is the most important, this is the second, this is the third, and I'm gonna keep asking down this list until the person says no, and keep asking them until they say yes. So if you have that outlined, and if everyone in your organization knows about it, then it will be easy to make adjustments and say, okay, like this is a first time volunteer. I don't think that they're going to do this really difficult thing. So I'm going to go down to this part of the list. And maybe like they said yes to these 3 things, so I'm going to ask them higher. But just having it sort of in rank order, I think helps to kind of organize it because it does get a little overwhelming. Ruby, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I think everything you said was what I would say as well. Just like thinking about your ladder of engagement, and are you essentially holding people's hand through the process? Are you also think about who you're speaking to? Is this like a super volunteer who has done stuff before? You would obviously speak to them different than someone who has never volunteered before and doesn't know how to go through the process or is intimidated by it. And I think that bringing in different perspectives that, haven't maybe been in politics before, like myself and a few other team members at Swing Left, this is our first experience in politics, and bringing that perspective of like, I've never done this before. What might I think, or how might I approach engaging with volunteers who maybe have never done this before?
Sorry, I was muted. Carla just asked, what are some good models for an effective ask ladder? I think there's a lot of different ways to do this, and it depends on your organization. But one way that I would think about it would be matching urgency, like what you need the most, with the sort of order of how difficult or how much involvement someone would need to take that action. So I would always start with what you need most. So if you need people to do text campaigns, or you need people to organize material to drop off for people, like asking for the things that you need first is really smart. But then also knowing like what the order of how difficult a task is can be smart too, because you can kind of feel out the conversation and see like, okay, is this person probably going to want something a little bit easier? So that's how I would think about it, just like urgency versus difficulty. But there's a lot of different ways to do this, and I would really recommend testing a few things out, like testing a few scripts, testing a few ladders, and getting feedback from your other volunteers and staff to see like what they've seen to be working the best. Always testing and iterating is smart. Any other thoughts, Ruby, before we have to break?
No, I think that kind of sums it up.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining. This was really fun. I enjoyed all of your questions. This was really engaging. And yeah, Ruby, any other closing thoughts?
Nope. Thanks everyone so much, and good luck with retaining and rewarding and recognizing your volunteers.
Great. Thanks. Bye, everyone.